Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we're going to focus on a faction that has been a little in the forefront recently, given the Codex releases for Warhammer 40k 10th edition. And that's the Admech. A faction that is in maybe the top 5 for most memed factions that I have seen.
True. True. Insert toaster joke now.
Obligatory toaster jokes. You can't help it. Something binaric screeching. And I'm not even saying those jokes are bad. I laugh at some of them. But if you've seen the Admech and you're interested in them, or maybe you've just seen jokes and you don't know anything about them, and you want to learn more, we think it'd be a great time to break them down. Because I do think this faction is really cool, and I think it's got more depth in it than a lot of people give it credit for. You just kind of have to drill down a little bit to see exactly what's going on. For the Admech, though, John, we got to go back. We got to go way back.
Way back. We have to go back to the age of technology.
Which isn't...
We have to go back to Terminator 2.
Well, not quite. We're just before Terminator 2. Okay? We are just before the events of Terminator 2.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, back in, 1992, a guy named Bill Gates... I'm
going to let you finish this joke home. You're looking at me to save you, and I am not.
No. All right, so...
You take it and run.
Way back when, Admech, were the inventors in the age of technology. They were, tech savants capable of creating these massive, AI, intelligent computer structures. They created all of the STCs, all of the big plans for every vehicle, everything you see in the Imperium, they made at some point, and more than. At some point, they were reaching Necron level of technology, and boy howdy, did that not end well.
Yeah, I mean, the key there is that, STCs is standard template constructs, and essentially you could think of it there's some machine that they designed a CAD file for so detailed that you could hit a button and it'll 3D print you a whatever. That could be a tank, it could be a building, it doesn't matter, anything. And they would make inventions that were society altering regularly, constantly.
Yes.
And on the back of their innovations, society flourished. As tech just got better and better, life got easier and easier. And until Terminator 2 happened, the events happened exactly as portrayed. Arnold Schwarzenegger, shotgun. It's a great time, and it's a really terrible time.
Yeah, so to summarize that up and translate it from Kentucky speak into...
I was going to say, I just summarized it. It was really good.
Into normal Warhammer speak, there was these things they made called the Men of Iron, which are these massive robots that are fueled by AI. They're extremely powerful. Even the most basic ones were terrifying, and a couple of them still exist in 40k, and they're still really strong. But they're extremely intelligent, and there's no clear definitive reason, but they essentially went haywire. There's a rumor that they got possessed by chaos. There's a rumor that they just saw the future through all of their calculations on what humanity would cause and tried to destroy humanity to prevent chaos. There's lots of theory. But they rose up and against their masters and started shattering human worlds, creates this massive conflict that burns the stars. It causes the downfall of the age of technology. It is the reason why in the setting nobody likes AI. And everyone thinks it's a bad thing, besides Votan.
And why it's absolutely illegal in the Imperium. It's why you have servitors, which are hollowed out human skulls or brains that are wiped and made to through meat flesh, essentially create an AI of sorts that's really rudimentary because they can't create actual AI for fear that they'll invoke this again.
Yeah, so it's if smartphones destroyed everything and caused the downfall of human civilization, and we went back to the Stone Age, but we had remnants of what phones were, so we just use payphones for everything now.
Because we thought
Like,
that the wireless signal is where the evil lived. So, like, it's okay, we just
Yeah.
do wired connections. Well, now there's no evil because we got around it.
Yeah. And like, so after this happens, the Age of Strife begins, which is where you see like warp storms and psychers becoming prevalent and all of like humanity collapsing. And this is where the Emperor starts fighting on Terra to unite the Techno-Barbarian tribes. But while he's doing that, over on Mars, they have their own Techno-Barbarian problem and their own like first schism that has like different members of like a religious sect that is going, hey, okay, this is caused by AI. We have to get rid of all of it forever. And the other side that's going, no, we can fix it. It was a bump in the road. Maybe don't nuke it all. And then they nuked everything, making all of Mars extremely irradiated from their civil war.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, they had defeated the Men of Iron barely, by the skin of their teeth. All of humanity had. It was an incredibly difficult battle. Again, Terminator, as you have seen, terrifying implications to try to fight technology that's all tied into each other and hyper-intelligent. And it left a society that was very, very fragile and kind of should have been delicate at the absolute most optimistic guesses of what they could take. And then despite those logical understandings, they still started to fight with themselves. So as you can imagine, the collateral damage to their culture, their society, to Mars was just, I mean, it was almost shattering to their society. All sorts of resources nuked, people dead, tech lost, records gone, and schisms that we will talk about soon. Because in the end, there really wasn't a clean victory for anyone involved.
Yeah, like it's sort of like everything gets bombed out to the Stone Age, but they still have all of this remnant of technology because it was the technological capital of the galaxy. So they build a religion around like the last and biggest computer on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the Machine God. They build this religion based off of like three tenets, which is Machine God, which is this massive like god-like structure that can make computations that sort of like informs their decision making. It's where they get the flesh is weak. That's where they get like most of their technological like guidance. Is this ancient machine just outputting like random errors? It's like if Clippy from Windows just like told you how to cook a beef Wellington, and then you ended up with Salisbury steak, and you're like, "Oh, this beef Wellington."
No, it ain't.
It's not.
No, Clippy. No.
But you figured out like Chat GPT out here helping you figure out how to like paint stuff.
It's rough. It's bad.
It's nuts.
So it's a terrible foundation for a religion. That's for sure.
The other two tenets is the motive force, which is essentially the Holy Spirit, or like the force, and that is the sustaining energy that keeps everything alive in the world, and they believe that also exists and lives within technology and is actually rooted in technology, and it is the driving force for the universe. And then after that is the Omnissiah, which they believe is effectively like their prophet or their messiah forced around technology that would come and save them from their technological hell and bring them back to salvation and absolve them of their sins.
And what a good timing, because the Emperor then appears on Mars after the war. What do you know? How cool. This like
it's almost like he planned
this golden armored glowing god covered in like incredible, almost like pseudo deific tech. I mean, just covered in aramite from head to toe for a bunch of people who really value tech as almost a piece of spiritual resonance. So as you can imagine, he was kind of off to a good foot with them. But the problem is that you have to remember that the Emperor wanted to create a society free of religion. That was his goal, as a way to try to stomp down chaos. He wanted to snuff out all superstition of any kinds violently if he had to, and he often did. And hopes of like creating his great work over time. And the Admech, being so fervently zealous, would normally be rife for being exterminated and shunting them out of his way and then moving on to the next planet. But their skill, their knowledge, their resource base was too valuable to destroy. They are logistically necessary at this time in humanity's growth, because you have to think they're coming out of what is essentially a dark age for all of humanity. And you can't just throw away a giant pile of resources easily.
Yeah, and like, there's a real argument that the Emperor would not have been able to do the Great Crusade if not for the Adeptus Mechanicus. So like he is forced to make a decision of, do I want ships and bullets, or do I want to give up some of my values?
He chose the latter. He gave them a religious exception. If under the agreement that they would work with him in his budding Imperium, and they would be loyal to him, he would give them a religious exemption, so they could continue to practice their religion, as long as they kept the supplies a-coming. They kept the technology flowing, and everything would be hunky-dory. And of course they agreed, because they now view the Emperor as the Omnissiah, the sort of prophet of the machine god.
And they didn't really stop there either. They also demanded a level of autonomy that no one else in the Imperium gets. And this lives into like modern 40k still, where they sort of get to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Outside of the Imperium. Like, they are their own ruling body with their own military forces and their own laws and their own religious practices, completely separate from the Imperium. Like, they are not a part of the Imperium. They are allied with the Imperium. But they have been so for so long, they are effectively allied.
Well, they are
effectively
part of it, yeah.
Yes.
And, like, you have to think, even on a small level, what are you going to do if you don't like the Admech? Like, Are you gonna try to like start a war with the local like Admech Forge planet? When you do it, the first thing that's happening is supplies are done. Like, you're not gonna get any more bullets. You're not getting any more fuel. You're not gonna get any more rations. Like, everything is prepackaged, is manufactured from them, which means a lot of people just kind of got used to living around them rather than rocking the boat to try to oust them, even in the early days when they weren't so dug in.
And some of the largest conflicts in the 40k setting are based around Forge worlds. Like, Armageddon was a Manufactorum hive world. Like, Vrax, also a Manufactorum Forge world. Like, these places where you're building so much of this equipment to send out into the stars to defend humanity against the washed hordes, while also dealing with super genociding everything that you probably shouldn't be genociding. Like, that requires a lot of bullets. It requires a lot of vehicles, and that is not a thing they're going to leave undefended.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's true. Logistics win wars, let's be honest. And in this case, this is the hub. It's the heart of the entire logistics empire. So they have a lot of pull. They got a lot of strength at this time, and even in modern 40k. And that would have given them a lot of protection, but the call in this case is coming from inside the house. And as time started to roll on after they made their agreement with the Emperor, old wounds started to fester, old sort of conflicts, old disagreements, old rivalries flared up. They got fanned by the flames of an expanding empire. And what started to be posturing and outright sort of political hostility eventually broke out into all-out physical devastation in warfare when the Horus Heresy kicked off. And half of the Admech functionally turned traitor.
Yeah, it creates this thing called the Dark Mechanicus, which follows chaos and creates chaos-corrupted machinery. Big whole deal. There's a whole book about it, and there's lots of sub-stories about it. There's a lot to get into there, but essentially what you should know is that they won their part of the heresy. They took over Mars, and all of the loyal Mechanicum was forced to flee to Terra. And they held on to that planet until the Siege of Terra happened. And when that was lost by the traitors, the surviving loyalists, with assistance from like Gilliman and stuff, who had recently come into system, take Mars back because immediately they know they have to. Like, we have to take this back if we want to salvage the Imperium at all, forcing the Dark Mechanicum to go to the Eye of Terror with the rest of the traitors, sort of creating a formal alliance with them at this point as well, where they have like intermingled with the traitors in the Eye of Terror for survival's sake.
Yeah, but Chaos Space Marines and Dark Mech. Yeah, it's weird bedfellows, but you do what you have to survive, and the siege was it all out loss for the traitors. And this is sort of where like the historical stuff ends, and we flash forward 10,000 years to modern 40k. And if you're considering getting into AdMech, this is going to be the stuff where you're at now. So in modern 40k, 10,000 years has passed from the Siege of Terra, roughly. And in that time, for the AdMech, largely, it's been a time of technological decay. Their understanding fundamentally has rotted from the core. Whereas before, they were masters of technology, and they were brilliant, passionate inventors who were coming up with new ideas, new approaches, daily, and literally daily. Now, even minor innovation is dogmatic heresy, punishable by death, literal death. If you deviate from a design, if you question, if you look too deeply, it could get you ended. And with that being the case, as you would imagine, over 10,000 years, less and less people asked questions, and less people had the information prerequisite to ask questions. And that, at a societal level, meant things got worse.
And I will argue that, like, death isn't even the worst punishment they have for a lot of people. Like, if you don't do stuff they want you to do, they don't just, like, execute you, throw you in a hole. They will lobotomize you and turn you into a walking computer, and sometimes they will link your mind with a bunch of other minds to create a Gestalt supercomputer, Servitor, where you lose all sense of like bodily function, but you're still awake. AdMech is some of the most horrifying things in the setting, where they take normal human beings and turn them into these like supercomputers that are pumped full of information until they are nothing but gray lumps of meat, and they can't speak, they can't move, but they're fully aware of where they're at and what's happening to them. And it's horrifying. Like, it is, the grim dark in this faction is rich. It's dripping in tragedy. Because many of the AdMech that are doing it don't realize how absolutely cruel it is. They just think that that's how you make stuff work now.
Yeah, because they just don't understand. Think about it this way, okay? I'm going to use an oil change metaphor, so forgive me if you're not, like, much into cars, but I promise it's a quick one. Imagine that, like, you need to change your car oil. Like, you're going to go to YouTube, or you're going to ask a friend how to do it, and they're going to tell you the steps to do it. And they will explain to you every step in the why, in the context, and overall how often you need to do it. And you're going to build some sort of understanding of, okay, the engine has a lot of moving parts, and if I don't keep oil in it, things are going to get really hot, they're going to heat up, there's going to be friction, and it's going to break my engine. So I need to do that. And then here are the ways, here's like the steps to do it for my car. However, imagine you had no buddy to explain it to you. You had no YouTube to explain it to you. All you had was a person who said it's your job to do this ritual. And they gave you a sacred tool that is the holy blessed 10mm socket wrench. And they showed you where to apply this blessed wrench. And you started to loosen the drain plug. You didn't know it was a drain plug. It's just the holy relic. And as you loosen it, the black goo comes out. You might even...
The corruption.
Yeah, you could think it's like...
The corruption.
Corruption. The spiritual corruption comes pouring out of this beautiful blessed machine. And then you finish the ritual by doing a whole bunch of chanting. You say some prayers, you maybe sprinkle some holy water on it, and in the end, you use the holy socket to put the drain plug back in, and then you fill it with the sacrament, like the blood of the divine or whatever, and you put it in the place where you're supposed to put the blood of the divine, and at the end, you do some flagellation, and like you call it a day. Change out a filter, bing, bang, boom, ritual done. Did any of the stuff do anything beyond the oil change protocol? No. But would you know that? No. And also, you're still going to have changed oil at the end, despite not knowing. So, like, the lack of context hasn't necessarily stopped them from doing everything. It just stops them from understanding fundamentally what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, or how to innovate on it, which has really led to, like, paralysis for them.
And part of the problem is that, like, the way that the universe works in 40K, this belief has created circumstances around the technology that now make them feel like they are correct. They're the machine spirits of these different small mundane objects will now behave poorly if they don't do these rituals, and they believe that is because they're being punished by the spirits and not that you just didn't do routine maintenance. So now imagine you were trying to change your oil and you only know how to do this weird obscure ritual. You flagellate yourself while trying to like change oil. And also you realize if you don't do it hard enough and good enough and with enough feeling, you are going to get yourself and everyone you care about murdered. You're going to probably be fanatic about making sure you do this right.
I mean, like, if you had context, maybe you know it's because you haven't put gun oil in your rifle in a decade. And it's more rust than actual furniture anymore. But they just all know. And even now, like, don't get me wrong, they are the pinnacle of Imperial technology in modern 40K. They are the best that the Imperium has to provide for tech. They're putting out the Space Marine armor. They're putting out the bolters. They're putting out the rare numbers of Terminator plates that exist. They're putting out the tanks. All of that stuff's theirs. So they are still functioning. But what they're putting out is assembly line, mass-produced tech. No longer are they coming up with like incredible, wondrous innovations daily, because that would be heretical to question the machine god's holy designs, which just puts them kind of in a state of stasis compared to where they were before.
Yeah, and where previously, even during 30K, they were not super up on innovation. They were still doing alterations or modifications or, changes to what they were doing. And they were making like some different patterns of armor, different patterns of dreadnoughts. Even if it was like not nearly as good as the age of technology, it was still better. In modern 40K, that doesn't exist whatsoever. Most of that stuff is degrading, and they're going to older and older iterations that is just easier to maintain because it's older. It isn't as complicated. And it means that the stuff that they know how to make, they're making in large quantities that are simple things. So it's not all about quantity, not about quality whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
This lands with just constantly pushing out las guns, constantly pushing out normal bolters. Nothing special, nothing unique, no specialized equipment. Very basic stuff. And
all of that is also coming from like fragmented Forge worlds. Like it's no longer one Forge world doing all the work. It's a whole bunch of isolated nodes. So even the communication is falling apart for them. Just sad.
Yeah, and that really kind of doesn't change at all until Belisarius Cawl. Probably the biggest character for AdMech. He changes his mentality in a small subsect of AdMech's mentality into one of innovation, questions the dogma, questions the religion as a whole, and is sort of in it for technological sake, not religious sake, which in this instance is terrifying for many in the AdMech. Like this is completely divergent from what they all know. Like it's an existential crisis for them that he just shows up and goes, "Yeah, I made new stuff."
Like, what do you mean new stuff? Like, and normally, like when someone was trying to make minor iterations, they would get a little pushback. There would be some like veiled threats, and they'd kind of back down. But Belisarius Cawl is a mover and a shaker in modern 40k, and he is like the only AdMech character I can name from modern 40k, which means he's a huge deal, who essentially says, "Stop me. We need the tech. There's a Primarch's a Primarch is back, and they need supplies." And through his incredible genius rivaling the Emperor, he pumps out new technology, new tanks that hover and fly, new patterns of bolt rifles and chainswords that are stronger and more efficient, and even a whole new breed of Space Marines that he has been cooking up in secret underneath the shadows, while no one could find him until it was too late and he was too valuable for them to just sort of straight out assassinate. And he has essentially offered it up to the new returned Primarch, Rebute Guilliman, and made a sort of handshake alliance with a Primarch.
And though he keeps sort of pressing his luck with that relationship with Guilliman, Guilliman won't get rid of him. He needs him. Like, he is making AI. He is trying to create more Primarchs. He is trying to make a clone of Guilliman in a computer so that he is an Excel wizard on demand. Like, he is doing crazy stuff, and he is just getting away with it.
I mean, it kind of, it harkens back to the Emperor and the old AdMech, right? Like, you're too valuable for me to necessarily bring you into compliance.
Yep.
And
he knows it.
Yeah. And if you're into AdMech, I highly recommend listening to the trilogy for, what is it?
Forge of Mars?
Godblight?
Godblight,
yes. Yeah. I don't remember the name of the trilogy. I just remember the books. But you get to see the interactions between Cawl and Guilliman and the arguments they are having about the pseudo-heretical pushings of Cawl as a just like almost rogue tech priest who is still loyal to the Imperium. It is an incredible change up for the setting. He is the perspective that they are kind of showing modern AdMech through. He is the character. And he's a huge deal, and largely his wants are what's driving much of the attention that AdMech are getting now. But there is a secondary plot happening, and that's derived from what was the Eye of Terror. In a galaxy, right in the center, there was a hole to hell, to the warp. But I mean, it's essentially hell if you are up on the warp. And many species, and like humans, Eldar, Necrons, have been trying to fight to keep that closed, and not too long ago in the setting, that effort failed. And the Eye of Terror ripped apart the galaxy, tore time and space asunder, and split the galaxy in half. Through just belt to belt, this hole into the warp just exists. It cut off communication, it cut off travel, it cut off supplies, it caused demons to sprout all over the place. Chaos Space Marines came running out of the portal itself to ravage planets. Some places just got sucked into it whole. And if the Forge World friction was already high because of distance before, now it's far worse. There are a bunch of Forge worlds on the Imperium Nihilus, like the cutoff portion of the Imperium on the north side of the galaxy, that cannot hardly at all communicate with Mars. Whereas supposed to be, they were going to be kind of subservient to Mars and approve their every action. That's not possible anymore. Not if you want to keep supplies coming out to fight these demons and these Chaos Space Marines and all the other threats. They feel like they need autonomy. Mars does not want them to have autonomy. Tension is rising, as you would imagine. And that hasn't come home to roost yet, but I think it's gonna.
Yeah, like where AdMech is currently sitting in the lore is like, they're the major suppliers of all the supplies to defend the Imperium, while also slowly questioning their own religion via the schism between the fundamentalists and Belisarius Cawl being a revisionist. And then on top of that, they have a logistical problem of losing all of their extended Forge Worlds to the problem of Nihilus. And this just sort of leaves them in a weird spot where, like, they could go in a bunch of different directions. Like, that it is a faction primed for major conflict. Not just from the normal, like, external sources, but internally. And I'm just curious to see where that goes, like, narratively.
Well, and I think it also kind of sets an interesting field for if y'all are out there wanting to play AdMech. You can make your own groups of AdMech that are entirely unique, with interesting, unique perspectives because of that rift. I mean, you're cut off from Mars. You want to deviate from general doctrine? Why not? Who's looking? If not now, when? Or if you want to really be like Crusaders of Mars, trying to take stuff back, and you want to paint them exactly how you expect and really stick to the core, cool, why not? Story is primed for you. So they're kind of setting a lot up with the faction and modern setting. It's just not long enough for it to really be out yet. And then that brings us to the end where we always just kind of like to give our minor, soft opinions about factions when we talk about it on the show. Because let's be honest, when we talk about stuff here, not all of it's our favorite, not all of it is stuff we dislike, and a lot of it we fall somewhere in the middle. Most of it we fall somewhere in the middle. But I'm not even going to like bury the lead. I think AdMech are awesome. Truly. They're super unique to 40K in the way that they're a mashup of a whole lot of different things that I haven't seen another game or movie or like book do exactly like this. The sort of twist of zealotry and rot to the uber tech faction is interesting. And I think the ground is fertile for more depth there.
Yeah, I think as a faction, as a like 1,000-foot view, it is extremely unique. The aesthetic is very cool, where it's very diesel punky, but it's still sci-fi and weird. It's got very strange like vehicles, very strange guns, very strange everything, but in a way that is wholly and uniquely its own. And like, I don't know, it's cool that they have flamethrower horses with being rode by robot cowboys that have like 6-shooters. Like, that sounds cool, right? Like, that sounds awesome.
Or the big like Da Vinci winged drop troopers with like coil guns. What?
Yeah.
What is that? That's amazing. I'm into
It's like Sucker Punch the movie, but like the faction.
It's cool. It's just cool. It's cool to look at. A lot of these models are brand new. Almost all of them are new, but some of them are brand spanking new. So it's also got a really cool line to back it up on the tabletop, so it could really be striking when arrayed in front of you, which is awesome. And I don't know. Like, I did not really think much beyond the faction. Well, I did not think much of the faction beyond, like, they look cool until recently. Because they've been in books I have read before, and they're always kind of samey. Like, a lot of the characters are just very samey. They're sort of one note. And I didn't really think about the faction much deeper until I've recently been reading Siege of Terra. And I'm not going to spoil anything about Siege of Terra. Like, it's the book series. I can't dare spoil it. But in the later part of that series, they do some plot points from Dad Abnett around a Skitarii and a single tech priest. And the amount of life that was sort of brought into this faction for me, the amount of humanity behind these faces that are supposed to have no emotion, no feeling, to be above those base primal impulses, but still having them in some ways. God, it was it was incredible. It was a breath of fresh air. I cannot explain how much cooler that was. And really, if I had one knock against the faction, it would be that now that I have seen that, like, there are great writers capable of that, I want more of that. Why isn't there more of that?
Yeah, give me, like, Tech Indiana Jones story where he's trying to find relics in the fringes.
I'm into it. Give me the tech priest who is super dogmatic and views humanity as divine, but wants to help all of, essentially, like, God's angels to do the good work through trying to get tech that, like, helps the common people, which puts them in friction with their own church, their own leaders. Like, show me that sort of nuanced tale. But like, I've read novels with tech priests, and I don't know, probably seen a dozen of those characters over time, and I could only name the ones from that one book because all the others were so forgettable that they all blend together. But I hopefully, now that we know that they have a vision for it, we'll see that now. And like, let's be honest, if my only knock is, this faction is so cool, I want you to do more with it, like that's a pretty good knock to have against a faction. And I hope for y'all out there that speaks to you. Truly, I think that they're a cool faction to get into. They're a little hard mechanically to learn, but if you're someone who has the right kind of techie mindset to be drawn to this faction, I think it's got a lot of gas in the tank. Especially as they are setting up for some lore-changing stuff to come in the future. At least strongly likely. And, to be honest, we're doing some research for the show. Maybe we'll at some point talk about a few of these Forge Worlds. Because I do think some of the philosophy underneath this is interesting.
I do think that individual Forge Worlds have a lot going on. Like, there's a flavor in the sub-factions that is missing from the characters, I think. Which is super neat and good to see.
Yeah, so maybe we'll circle back. And if you're into that, keep an eye on the channel. Subscribe, like, y'all know the deal. For now, we appreciate you. And that's been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. See y'all on the next one.